is on Zoom and Facebook.
Well, we are on Zoom. This is streaming on Facebook and YouTube. Yeah.
It's on there somewhere.
I liked I like waiting for the applause, and and the long ring of the guitar.
Yeah, well, you gotta milk it for all you can.
My guest today is my dear friend and cohort in crime of jazz, Frank Potenza. Frank Potenza. Da 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 da.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Kath. This is an honor and a privilege.
I'm so glad you're here. And I'm gonna take this out so maybe my husband he'll interrupt us in his pajamas. So just do that. Not that pajamas are a bad thing.
That's the nice thing about online. You could be wearing anything below the waist or nothing. Pants optional, you know.
Well, unless you get up.
Well, you'll find out.
Originally we postponed this meeting and we were going to kind of pay tribute to Barry Zweig, and we'll mention him several times. But
Yeah.
Barry Zweig was our friend who was an awesome, wonderful guitar player and an awesome, wonderful person. Just
The
totally
best.
sweet.
Just the
Yeah.
best.
And he passed right right as COVID was starting to
Yeah.
go up, which I'm glad of the timing because you know then we wouldn't have seen him, and it just would have been really hard on his daughter, very hard on his daughter. So anyway, but Barry, I'm sure Barry's watching from wherever he is because he loves you.
Yeah. He was the best.
Yeah. Um, so Frankie, darling, I know some of this information, probably more than most people I talk to, but I'm still going to ask it so I can get into details. Um, uh, you grew up on the East Coast, and whereabouts and how did you jump right into playing guitar? Were you very young when you did?
No. I I grew up in Providence, and I am told I took a few piano lessons as a young person because there was a piano in my mother's house. That was the first thing she put in the place. Like a third floor tenement, she had a piano, nothing else. When
That's
she
what they did, didn't they? Yeah.
Yeah. So there was a piano and there was always music, and my folks both loved music, and actually I just posted a photograph on my timeline of me, and I think I'm probably 4 years old, and I'm sitting on a chair and I'm playing a ukulele. And my mother's playing piano, my sister's sitting next to us, and we used to go in the living room and with the parlor.
I got to go look for that while you're talking. Go ahead.
And so that was just something that there was always a ukulele and the piano around the house, and my oldest sister Dot could play the ukulele well enough to accompany herself singing 5'2" and that sort of thing. So I learned how to tune it, and I learned how to play, basic little chords on the ukulele, and that was kind of my first contact with a string instrument. And then there it is.
Yeah. Oh. Oh man.
But how about that wallpaper? I mean, is that busy wallpaper?
Yeah, but that was totally the style.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Nice looking piano. Look at that. Beautiful.
So there. So that's yeah. So that's the earliest I remember having anything to do with playing instruments and music. Like I said, there were supposedly some piano lessons that I really have no recollection of, and that might have involved beating and nuns and whatever, because I went to Catholic school. Maybe I blocked that out of my memory. In
Maybe.
any case, when I was in the first grade,
Yeah.
so what are you, 8 years old in the first grade?
Yeah.
Um, my folks loved music, and if you wanted to study music, they would get you an instrument and they would get you lessons. And so I chose accordion, and I studied accordion for like a year and a half or something.
Uh,
And so they bought me the thing, and I took the lessons, and And at the same time, my sister, who was next in age to me in the family tree there, took guitar lessons. So she had like a Gibson flat top, like a student model Gibson
Yeah.
that they had bought her, and she quit before I did. She just thought, this is, I don't want to do this. And so she just quit, and the guitar was laying around the house. So I started picking up the guitar and just trying, because I knew something about how to work it, and I tried to learn stuff on it. And then my oldest, well, an older cousin of mine, who was already kind of out playing in bands in Providence, um, noticed me one day, and I was playing the guitar, and he said, "Hey, did you ever see this?" And he showed me a few different things and whatever, and I just thought, "Hey, you know." And he was like, he was in a band playing in clubs. He had like, greasy hair and drove a Cadillac convertible, and he smoked cigarettes, and he could blow smoke rings, and he was like, I
Yeah.
tell him he's still the coolest guy I know. So I thought, there goeth I. So that was it. And I just kind of toyed around with it. And then at some point, my folks bought me an electric guitar for Christmas and this small amp. And eventually, I found my way to some kind of guitar lessons. And I didn't last that long. So that would have been something like age, I don't know, 12, something like that. And then I got a better guitar on one of the Christmas, like an actual Fender guitar, sometime around 1964, I guess it was. And then I took lessons from the guy that actually kind of taught me something of any real substance. Like he had me playing like chord melody stuff and bossa nova stuff and Misty and stuff like that. And so stuff that I still do. I mean, some of the tunes I play, it's like you have that horrifying realization. It's like I've been playing this song for over 50 years, and it's like I said it to an audience once, and I freaked myself out so hard I almost passed out. It was like 50 something years. But, so that was the beginning of my whole relationship with like that level of popular music. Because before that, it was rock stuff and R&B stuff, and my cousin would show me like Bill Doggett tunes, the guitar parts to Bill Doggett tunes and stuff like that. So, so that's kind of how I got started.
Yeah. Yeah. So, who was well, it doesn't have to be jazz, but I mean, who were some players as you were coming up and getting more and more into the music that you were flummoxed by? Like, who were you like? Oh my God, this is great. I'll play this record again and again and again and again to listen.
Yeah, I mean, again, because of it was like the 60s, like late 60s. So, all the guitar gods from that time, like I saw Jimi Hendrix in 67, 68, and 69. So that whole style of, Eric Clapton and Jerry Garcia and all the rock god guys,
Yeah.
that was really what I was listening to a lot of and what I was trying to figure out what they were doing. And then I'm taking lessons, and Tony had me doing Misty is a chord melody. So
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was kind of two worlds of stuff. But again, the popular music of the 50s and early 60s had been so all over the place, and there was everything from Elvis to Frank Sinatra and Joe Stafford and all those good singers that you heard regularly on the radio. And
Yeah.
so a lot of those tunes I know because of hit radio and because I heard them a million times as a kid.
Yeah.
And so, but the first jazz guitar, because my Tony would try to get me interested in different Herb Ellis or people like that, and I wasn't ready for it. It just sounded like old guys to me, and I just it was good. You could tell, oh, these guys can really play, but it's like that wasn't really where I wanted to go. I was like a lot more interested in the Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, all that stuff. And we were going out to see all those bands in like hockey rinks and the early rock stuff. I mean, all those concerts that happened. And so, but George Benson was the first guy that hooked me, and I just thought, this guy's got. He just had enough bluesy, kind of greasy, kind of sort
Yeah.
of parts of his playing, and those records that were the Columbia records and the CTI records that I kind of went through the whole '70s buying and all that stuff
Yeah.
until till '76, I guess it was, when Breezen came out, and then he became a huge pop star. But I
Yeah.
used to go see George in the early '70s in small places in New England,
Yeah.
like relatively small clubs. I mean, it'd be like the Jazz Workshop in Boston, which was that
Yeah.
was a really like sort of
small.
pretty big deal jazz venue, but he'd play in someplace in like Worcester for like 5 nights, and we'd go every night, and sit in the front, and there'd be 10 other people there, and it was like, so that was for me kind of the first where you just I'd look at that guy and I go, man, how do you do that? And he used to sing in those days, and we would leave and just think, this guy's a great singer. It's like he'd sing like one tune, and he always said, "This is for the ladies," and he'd sing like "What's Going On" or something, and I'd think, this guy is like a great vocalist. It's just, and sure enough, in '76, kaboom.
I was at one of his first singing gigs, I guess in LA, or I mean, it sounds like he was singing before, but it was at the Roxy, and Al Jarreau opened for him.
Oh yeah.
And I remember when he started singing that literally every woman in the audience sighed, like audibly. Everybody went, "Ah."
He just had it. I mean, he'd sing "Summertime" or something like that, and you just think to yourself, man, this guy is as good of a singer as you can be.
Yeah, really beautiful sound. So you sang too, right?
Yeah, I mean, when again, part of my early childhood was like my oldest sister ran a dancing school right around the corner from my mother's house.
Yeah.
Because it was that part of Providence where it was like a section of the town that was built around a mill.
Yeah.
So all the houses were like, the houses right close to the mill were for the people who were the officials, the administration. And then there were tenement houses where the people that worked in the mills lived. And they were like, 2, 3, 4 decker house kind of
Yeah.
things.
Yeah.
And so that's like kind of what the whole neighborhood looked like. I lost my train of thought. What was the last question you asked me?
Blah, blah. Oh, it's a terrible thing to waste a mind. Let's see. Um,
I started thinking so hard about that old neighborhood. I can't remember why you asked me that question.
Thing about, God, I can't remember. Does anybody remember out there who's listening what we said like 5 seconds ago?
Rewind the
Um,
tape.
oh, well, maybe we'll think of it.
We were talking about the
Okay.
whole accordion and oh, all right. So the dancing school was what I was going to say.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Right. So the
yeah.
dancing school was in the storefront of a 3 decker house right around the corner from my mother's.
Oh,
And so she ran this business for a couple of years, and we all, of course, went and took dancing lessons, and it was tap dancing and ballroom dancing and whatever other kind of dancing you could think of. And then we did, I know this is like 59 and 60, so I was 9 and 10 years old.
singing. Thank you, Sandy. It was singing.
Yeah. So
Okay.
we sang and danced in those recitals, and that was,
Oh,
I mean, we sang as kids in the house. My mother'd play piano, and she was entirely self-taught, and she could play anything on piano in C. It was always in C.
wow, Irving Berlin.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's, because she had figured out that part of it kind of like, just herself.
Yeah.
So her right hand, the pinky, had the melody. And then the other, these maybe middle finger and thumb followed in sort of rigor mortis, kind of triad, sort of alleged harmony supporting the melody. Sometimes. Catch as catch can. Sometimes it's good, sometimes not so good. And then her left hand kind of did sort of jive stride, like it had hit boom, hopefully the root, and then pling, and then some more kind of in whatever kind of like other notes that hopefully supported the melody. But it was completely amateur and completely whatever. But we thought she was a genius because we'd say Honeysuckle Rose, and she'd go, oh yeah, da, 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 and and we'd sing along, and she knew all the words and all that stuff. So it was just something that we did as kids. And then in 59 and 60, we were in the dancing school, and we did these 2 recitals where my sister hired like an auditorium downtown in Providence, and we actually had like costumes, like hand sewn costumes and
Wow.
lights and props that my uncles and my father and my uncles made. And it was
Wow.
this unbelievable family effort. So 59 and 60, and the photographs of that. Well, the photographs from the 59 one, the guy never, she came, they hired a professional photographer, and he never showed up at the photographs after that. And I thought my mother would kill him. And they chased him around and they tried to sue him and whatever, but no photographs ever came. So the next year we did another recital and they took the photographs and a different guy came and now we have these something like 65 8 by 10
Oh,
black and white glossy photographs of us. And those were so much my mother's prized possession that she demanded to be buried with those. And was. I mean, how bizarre is that?
oh my God.
And
Oh.
so before that took place, which was in 2004, I guess, my one of my younger brothers scanned them all. So we
Yeah.
all have digital copies of them. So every once in a while on my Facebook page or somewhere, I'll just put one up and it's like me in some like amazing costume that was custom made for me with like a cane and top hat and four other girls and like it's so all of this stuff that was like just a part of my childhood and we just kind of took it for granted like well, we all did that, all the
Yeah.
neighborhood kids did that, so it was like you didn't think it was anything unusual. It's like that's what we do.
Yeah. Yeah.
We dance. So it was just kind of a very sort of natural organic part of life. It wasn't like we thought we're musicians or we're special or anything. It was just we all do this. And the guy that accompanied us, the only accompaniment for this whole thing, both years, was the guy that my sister's, what was it? Bill Miniscalco. And he was just a local pro. And
Yeah.
so he came in, and I still, to this day, in my classes, I show the students, you know how when you talk about sheet music, and it's like the actual sheet music that has photograph or graphics on the cover or something like that.
Yeah.
And just the idea that, like, it has the verse if one exists and all these parts of the tune that just in a fake book they're gone, they're not there
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So you can learn so much about all of that stuff. So I still have, like, for instance, we did I Got Rhythm, and it was a whole, we sang the whole song and we tap danced to it and all that stuff. And so on the sheet music that I have scanned, and I show it to my students in my class when we talk about rhythm changes and all that stuff, I go, so here's where this came from. And his Bill's notes are in pencil in the upper left hand corner, and it's like, so it's in B flat in the lead sheet, and it goes, and he just puts in F. That's it. And he's going to transpose the whole thing from the lead sheet, and then how many choruses and how many half choruses, and when somebody does whatever, that's the cue to do this, and just like whatever little notes. And I just thought, wow. I mean, basically, my mother would go down to the music store downtown and just buy the sheet music, and they'd go, here you go, Bill. And then he'd figure out our key, he'd make his notes, and when it came time to do the recital, he was like, we just thought, this guy's like a hero. It was amazing. I still marvel at his musicianship to this day when I look at that lead sheet and I just think to myself, man, this guy was, he was like huge.
you
I
know,
love it.
oh, when I was growing up, my dad was a sax player. So I used to go out on, to rehearsals with him. And my sisters and I would go on his gigs and sing. And so I was used
So
to,
what kind of venues? Are those nightclubs or are those
no, no, most of it was, well, no, I think they were like events, parties.
okay, casual? Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was really clubs.
Uh-huh.
And but those guys were like, "What key do you do it in?" They just changed it on the spot, right?
Yeah.
And then when I when I and so I went to Berkeley, and then when I came to LA, and people like couldn't play "Girl from Ipanema" in D. I was like, "What do you mean you can't play it in D?" It was so like out of my understanding. What do you mean? I mean, well, you're a professional musician.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't get it. But those guys, I mean, they did all that. I should when I play a song, I'm going to go get something to show you. It's really cool. It's a my dad used to bring me. He'd say, "Shh, don't tell anyone," and he'd bring me to some guy's garage to buy a fake book.
Yeah.
So it's along those lines, but I'm going to show you something that you'll get a
What is
kick.
he? Was he a tenor player?
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, I have in the closet behind me
yeah.
um, every illegal fake book that's mentioned in the book, The Story of Fake Books, Barry Kernfeld's book.
Oh, I don't know that. I'm going to.
Oh, if you've never read that, I mean, it's kind
What's
of
it called?
The Story of Fake Books.
Oh,
Barry, Kernfeld. Fascinating read. I use it in my pedagogy class that I teach every other year, and
yeah.
I've read it about 6 times so far, and I'll read it again when I
Wow.
when I teach the class. I just think it's a great story, and you would never guess how the whole thing started.
Wow.
It's fascinating.
Can you put it in a nutshell how it started?
No, I know it'd be like a spoiler alert. I mean,
Oh,
I can tell you, but then you,
okay, okay, all right. But
yeah.
you know what? When I was at Berkeley, my two friends made the real book.
The last chapter in this book is about that. Okay, and you know their names. So
Yes,
when we're offline, you can tell me if I'm right about who I think it is. Because in the first edition of the real book, which I have, they sort of chose to immortalize themselves by including one of their tunes. So,
that's
you'd
correct.
be seeing tunes by like Chick Corea and like Dizzy
Yeah,
Gillespie, and you'd see Badong, and you'd go, who the hell is this?
yeah. That
It's,
is correct.
yeah, it's Steve Swallow and Pat Metheny and all those guys that were around that contributed their tunes are interviewed in depth in this last chapter of the book. And it talks all about that whole thing of how that came to be. And boy, Steve Swallow, I mean, I love him anyway, but he made the best decision of his life by saying, yes, here are my lead sheets to my tunes and put those in this book as well. And they all knew it was an illegal endeavor, but it's still, I mean, I have mixed feelings about the whole thing because there are certain aspects of the way it has impacted the way people learn tunes and play music that has a downside to it. It's
Yeah,
cool and it's a great way to get through a gig, but if that's all you're doing, oh, here right now I'm on my soapbox.
yeah, yeah,
If that's all you're doing to learn the tunes, you ain't doing enough.
yeah. But that's a kind of a different issue. But
Yeah.
yeah, I agree with you. I mean, mixed feelings, and I think those guys have mixed feelings too. That they did it. But at the time, it was really because the old fake books had shitty chords, and they wanted to, upgrade the harmony stuff. They worked like 6 months on it, and then the next 3 days, somebody copied it and sold it for $5 less than they were selling it
Yep.
for.
Yeah. And that just went on and on and on, which is why everyone on earth has that,
Yeah.
And then about all of the the subsequent editions that had all the pages of errata that mistakes. All right, so the first five
Oh,
pages,
yeah, yeah,
oh
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
the second bar of this is not that, it's this, and the melody is not that, it's this, and it's like so. And the real downside to all of that, and I'll tell you this quick story. So I go on a gig. I won't tell you who. It's a saxophone player. It's me. I'm here in California. Duo. We're playing in somebody's backyard. And he says, "How about Desafinado?" I said, "Sure." F? And he goes, "Yeah." And we play it. And we get done. And he says, "Well, you learned that out of the real book, didn't you?" Really snotty.
Oh.
And I felt like I had just been sort of like slapped in the face. And I went, I did that. But I said, "Why would you say that?" Name. And he said, because you're leaving the same four bars out of it when it goes to A, that everybody that learned it out of the real book. And
I remember that
I
actually.
thought, you better be right, because you're going to get a phone call if you're not right. And I went home and I figured out, I had a Jobim songbook, I guess, and I looked it up in that, and sure enough, it's missing four bars in the key of A.
Yeah,
And I thought, son of a, you know,
I remember that actually. Yeah, yeah, interesting. Well, so let me before we go on, I want to read a few hellos and stuff. um, let's see. Cecily Gardner says hi to us.
Cecily, how are you? Man, Cecily and I went through the wars together, the casual wars.
She cracks me up every time I'm with her, and we meet somebody like totally out of the blue, that I kind of know. She has this whole history with them. I'm like, it's so weird. What? How do you have this whole history with all these people? But anyway, yeah. Okay, Pat Kelly.
I
Hi,
miss you.
Pat.
Hi, Pat.
Tim Weston is here.
I've never really met Tim in person, but we're sort of Facebook friends and acquaintances, and
He's cool. I had him
oh
on
yeah,
last week, and it was
yeah, I'm a
great.
big Tim fan. We've never met in person, I don't
Yeah,
think, unless
yeah. I'm a Tim
I have
fan
some
now.
kind of outstanding personal loan that I'm forgetting about or something.
Kenny Pore. He says hi. Good to see you.
Yeah,
And let's see, Dave Iwataki, one of my favorite guitar players.
I don't know Dave.
He's a pianist. He and I were were faculty at Cal State LA.
Huh? Where?
Yeah, he's a
Where is
wonderful
that?
person. Let's see. 6, 7 years ago, something like that. 6, 7, 8 years ago.
That's where I got my master's degree.
Oh. Um, did
300 years.
Mary Taylor Hatch is here? Hi, Taylor.
Hi, Taylor.
He said, "Did Mary Osborne and her playing have any influence on you?"
No, I mean, I kind of knew about her, but I didn't, for some reason, have access to any recordings of her. And a lot of what I wound up listening to once I got onto George Benson was the result of a guy in Providence who, his name was Carl Henry, and he ran a small record store in the ghetto called Carl's Diggins.
Okay.
And so I used to go there as a kid and buy singles with my paper route money. So I'd buy like some kind of hit single from the early '60s.
Yeah.
And so he'd see me all the time. My father would drive me up there, and I'd go in and I'd say, I want this, and then he'd hand it over the counter. It was a 45, right? For like under $1.
Yeah.
And then I started buying albums, and there was a larger commercial store right down the block from him that I discovered that I used to go to. But when I got into jazz, he was my supplier. So I would go in and I'd go, Carl, I like this guy, and I'd show him, whatever, and he'd go, well, if you like that guy, you need to know about this guy, right? And then he'd say, all right, so now I got hooked on Pat Martino, and he'd say, well, I don't have any more Pat Martino, but my guy's going to New York in 2 weeks, and I'll have him look around for you. And then the guy would come back from New York with like 2 Pat Martino records on Prestige that were no longer available, that were out of print. And so he steered me into a lot of other guitar players that I probably wouldn't have discovered. Well, I probably would have discovered at some point some other way. But Mary Osborne, for some reason, just I knew who she was, but I can't say I know a whole lot about her or I ever did in my.
I would think just by how you play that Pat Martino would have been along. Hey, I have a surprise for you. Are you ready?
Me?
Yeah. Are you ready?
I don't know.
Let's see. Let's see how ready you are, man.
Oh. My,
Sonny Wilkinson, ladies and gentlemen.
oh. Oh.
You can tell they have.
Guys! My guys!
So now, one of the things I was worried about was whether or not I was going to have to tell the story about how we met. Which I guess I still don't have to, but.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me just say, ladies and gentlemen, this is Sonny Wilkinson, wonderful singer, dear friend of ours, and Frank and Sonny have had a duo for years, and recordings and performances, and obviously adore each other.
Oh, hi, you guys.
How's everything in Okimos?
Man, I can tell you, it is so hot and wet, moist here. It's like
Oh,
cool temperatures, 90 degrees, right? And it's air you can cut with a knife. It's so moist.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember that from.
Other than that, it's good. Ronnie's in the kitchen making gazpacho. He'll probably stick his head in and just say hi to you.
Okay.
He said he doesn't like you.
I don't tell him a bit.
Oh, golly.
All right. So are we going to tell the story, or we're just going to talk about current events?
Oh, I think we should tell the story. But we probably have to leave out the
Yeah, we
exit.
have to leave out names and a lot of sort of essential details. But we were on a casual together. Now, any idea what year this is?
No, golly, no, I don't.
I'm going to say 80, 88, maybe.
No. Well, maybe a little earlier than that, because I left in 93.
Okay, so maybe 87.
Yeah,
87.
could have been. Yeah.
So we're on this gig that's like a casual. We don't have to give any names or any details, and I didn't want to be on it. Now,
That's an understatement.
it was just at a point in my life where I had a recording career going, and I was doing something that I at least felt okay. This is what I came here to do. But I wasn't making enough money to be able to not do freelance work, and so I was playing a casual on guitar, which I eventually. Well, I'll tell that part later. So I'm playing guitar, and I got a bad attitude,
Honey,
and
you were playing bass.
no, I was playing guitar on the first one.
Oh, you were? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, yes, I remember it.
yeah. And you were dressed up. You were dressed in like a sort of like kind of Western kind of dress,
Yeah,
right?
it was silk, green silk covered with stuff. Yeah.
Right, well, I wouldn't have got those details. But anyway, so at some point you came up to me and introduced yourself, and you were very nice and very like complimentary. And I know you have records, and I know your recordings and whatever. And I just kind of barked something, that, yeah, whatever. And I mean, it's nice to meet you. But I wasn't kind.
Okay, so just to add a little bit in there, I had heard a lot about you from various people about what a great guy you were.
Oh dear.
And so when we came up, this gig was the worst of gigs. It was unflattering. I'm not going to say the circumstance, which was also difficult, but it was in a tent and the wind was howling down our back. It was miserable. And so he was standing behind a pillar in this tent, scowling like,
Drag. I was just total drag on that. I mean, I knew it. I couldn't get out. I couldn't stop doing it. I was in such a bad mood, and I was like, I just thought, this is poisoning my soul to be here. It's like, you know.
And then she comes up to you.
like Miss Golden Retriever puppy dog. And I thought, well, you know, he seems like he's in a bad mood, but everybody says he was nice. I go, hi, Frank. I'm Sonny Wilkinson. I'm so pleased to meet you. And he looked at me like, shut up. I went, oh.
I'm so sorry, honey. So we got through the rest of the gig, and then we're waiting for, because we had to be like jitneyed or shuttled to our cars from the location of where the thing was. It was like this rigmarole, just pain in the ass. And so now we're there waiting for the shuttle, and you actually made some kind of another attempt at a conversation, which I think I pretty much shut down in quite the same rude way.
Yeah.
And that was the end of it. Then we went to our separate cars, and we left. And so now the one I was playing bass on was maybe a year later. Was it a year later?
Yeah, it was quite some time, and it was in Westwood in some sort
In
of.
Westwood at Mateo's. Yeah, upstairs,
Yeah.
Christmas. And so I'm playing bass on that one, and we see each other, and you were leading, I think.
I was the
Right,
leader
so
of the
you're
band.
leading, so I'm the bass player. So now that became my. If I'm going to play casuals, I'll play bass because now I don't have so much of a bad attitude about I'm not doing what I want to do on guitar, right? So that's my personal problem. So I'm playing bass. We play this whole casual. We have a great time,
Yeah.
right? It was really a fun gig. And at the end of it, should I say it? At the end of it, we're about to leave, and Sonny walks up to me and says, "So you're not an asshole."
Oh,
And we laughed and have been laughing ever since.
uh, can I tell one other story about us and our just long, I mean, like brother and sister, wonderful friendship and musical camaraderie, right? And we would do really lovely duo concerts together. Just, oh my God, have a ball, because he's such a consummate musician. So I tell my students this now. We'd hold hands before a gig, and he goes, "Okay, we're going to pretend we're tied to the front of a train, and we're going to lean forward and go, grrr." Like leaning so hard into the music. And I just love that image of just being bold and fearless and leaning in so hard that you've got bugs in your teeth.
Well, we originally, the first time you called me to play, I think it was at Drake's, and I was subbing for a piano player.
Yeah.
I was the booker, Frank.
Yeah. Kathy booked that room.
Wow. Okay, so you were working there with bass and piano, and the pianist couldn't make it, and you said, "Can you sub for the piano player?" And I said, "Sure." And so I did it, and we did the one gig, and I, in my infinite arrogance and cockiness, said, when she asked me to do it again, I said, "Do we need the bass player?"
Right.
And
We don't need no stinking bass player.
she said, "I guess not." And so we played as a duo, and that was the beginning of it.
Yeah, the duo was born.
I just want to say, and I've talked about this before. I can't remember with who, but so one year at the IAJE. Oh, maybe I talked about it with you, Sonny, on here on one of the shows. That you guys played, and the whole room was filled with your peers, right? And there was, I mean, the whole thing was great. There was one song that stood out. It was "Nothing's Gonna Hurt You." What is the name of that?
Yeah, not while I'm around from
Not
Sweeney.
One. I looked around, and every person, your peers, were crying or quiet. It was like, whoa, slaughter, slaughter. So that's the
Not
two
bad, huh?
Now, what that was that San Antonio? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
No, was it San?
But
I don't think I went to San Antonio ever. New York, I think.
Okay, all right, because the San Antonio was the first time we did it at IAJE. That was the first time we worked as a duo, and that was like a rather large ballroom that was pretty full.
Yeah.
And we got the most amazing positive reaction, and for the rest of the conference from that. And I was just, I thought, wow, I was amazed and encouraged, and we didn't get one booking from that.
I know.
Not a single opportunity at all. Just a bunch of, hey, good jobs.
Yeah, but look at the effect. I mean, I still remember it. What that must have been 20 years ago at least.
Oh God, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, IAJE's been over it since 2008.
Yeah. Oh, really? 2008?
That was the demise. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to do the math in my head. Oh God. Anyway, there's certain things you can do. Now I understand why my mother said, "I can remember when I was 15, but I can't remember yesterday."
We've all amply demonstrated that here in the last hour, haven't we? What was I talking about?
Oh my God. So when are you going to get together again, you guys?
Oh God.
Well, we don't want to rush into something like this. Besides, I'm still mad at Ron for ruining the band. So it's,
I know,
yeah,
right?
yeah, you can tell him that.
Well,
Yeah, you took her to
Yeah,
mini.
I mean, she would like, for her own personal happiness, just packed up and moved to Okemos, and that was the end of it.
yeah, left LA and moved to Michigan.
Yeah, man. How screwed is that, man?
But the last time we played together was at Alan's house, I think.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah,
In
Which is
LA.
quite a ways back now.
yeah.
It seems like yesterday, honestly, but it was a while ago,
I'm
right?
sure it was 3 or 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh, it's more than that.
Is it?
Yeah, I just saw a photograph of. I'm trying to remember who was in the photograph, but the shirt I'm wearing was one that my brother. It was one of the most commented on pieces of clothing I've ever worn in public anywhere. And people would say, "Wow, that's a great. Where did you get that? Whatever." And my brother Joe, for years, would say, I'd be in the shirt, or he'd see a picture of me in it, and he would just send me an email that said, "I want that shirt." And I finally gave it to him. So that's what I was wearing that night at Alan's house, and I'm trying to think of how many years ago I gave him the shirt, but it's been more
It
than
was, I hate to
like
tell you, but
6 or 7.
I think it was 2019 because I'm looking at my
No,
photos, which,
no way.
oh, that's what it's.
Nobody, that was when I came out to visit and we had a little party at Ellen's.
Oh, that
Oh,
was the gig. Okay. Oh, wait a minute. No, yeah. Okay. So that wasn't the gig with you and Frank.
Just
No.
say hi. You got to say hi.
I wasn't there. I don't think I was invited to that.
Oh, yeah, right.
Hi, Ronnie.
Hi, Ron.
Look at that handsome man down there. Hi, Kathy. Hi, Frank. Oh my God.
So, Ron, are you playing underwater golf there in the humidity, or?
The humidity today was only 40, right?
Uh-huh.
So it wasn't too bad. But the temperature, yow.
Yeah.
So,
Did you play golf?
I hit a bucket of balls. I did that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So I call that rehearsing.
That would be rehearsing if I actually had a gig in mind. But
One of my friends.
when I play golf, it's kind of like playing with, what's those fake programs? It's like Jamie Aebersold music. Wow.
Well, I played golf 2 weeks ago now. 2 weeks ago tomorrow, for the first time in about 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was pathetic, and as you might well imagine, and I had to be shown which end of the club to blow into. I couldn't remember thing one about it. And,
because you actually strum a golf club, but that's all right.
I thought I was going to be inappropriate.
Hey, look, I don't want to cut this short. I know this is going out to hundreds of millions of people. Due to the coronavirus, and we're all locked in here, I actually have to teach a lesson at 4. But before I do that, for just a few seconds here, I have to run a blender because that's part of my gig now. All right.
this is
You're going to hear the noise in the background.
It's making gazpacho.
So just kind of pretend that lip sync for just a few seconds.
Well, we can pretend that we're in a club.
in a club, yeah, that happens all the time.
Oh, we could do that. We could do that. I'll clink a few glasses.
Yeah.
Hey, it's great to see you guys. All right.
Yeah.
Super. Hang in there and keep playing golf.
Well, once in a row, it's
All right, here we go.
Hey, why is it that a lot of musicians seem to play golf?
I guess there's a lot of free time during the day, and especially in Southern California, you can do it year round, and it's just something that, like, my father got way into golf later in life. We actually bought him golf clubs because he just never would allow himself the luxury of having that free time to himself with 6 kids. And so we just pitched in and bought him golf clubs. And he goes, "What am I going to do with these?" And I said, "You're going to go out with your brother and play golf." But it's in Rhode Island, so there's only so many weeks out of the year where you can do that.
Yeah.
And he went out and loved it to the point where we actually created a monster, and he would call into work and call in sick and go play golf.
God.
It was great. We loved it. We just thought, wow, this is
Just so you know, Frank, the name of that sport is not golf. It's golf.
Golf. Yeah.
great. We have to have her here now.
I know.
She's going to be leaving soon. I think she has an appointment at 1.
Oh dear.
I think golf, and I've noticed also, another sport. What is it when you stand on the board in the water? Surfing. Yeah, that was a hard word. Anyway, surfing and golf I seem to know a lot of players who do that.
Sure,
I think there's something about the focus, the action and the focus that's similar to music. I mean, there's a lot of things that are similar if you really want to get down to it. But I really do think that when I think about golf, because I've played a little golf, and it's kind of a, I don't want to say spiritual, but it kind of is. It's kind of this, you have to kind of really have a perspective, right, in golf?
It can be, when you're not throwing the clubs around and wrapping them around a tree, and all the frustration that goes with. Now, I mean, as little as I play, I can't really expect much out of it. I don't. So I had a good time. It's like I just went out with Al Williams, a friend of mine, and it's like we played 9 holes, and he said, "Do you want to play another 3?" And I said, "No, I'm good." You know, it's like
Hey,
2 hours of that.
how is Al Williams? Al Williams that used to own the Jazz Safari, that Al Williams, right?
He's great.
Oh, nice.
So he lives in this thing in like on the point of San Pedro with his like just ocean, like 300 degrees of ocean view and
Wow.
whatever. And there's a golf course on it. It's like an 18 hole. It's kind of a lot of it is hilly, so you know you're playing uphill or downhill or leaning to the side at a 45-degree angle or whatever. But it, you know it was mostly par three, some par four, and I bogeyed like 3 or 4 holes, and then I just had a couple of like 10 putts and just awful stuff. But my chipping was actually, which is usually the worst part of my game, that was what I did the best. But that's the first time I played. Like I said, something like 4 years.
Yeah. Cool. Sonny, you have a question from Karen McCants. She wants to know how the pottery's going and is your studio air conditioned?
That's so sweet, Karen. My pottery is going, I'm just down there every day, if I can be, playing with all different kinds of techniques. And a basement in the Midwest needs no air conditioning. It's cold down there. So it's lovely and cool and sometimes a frustrating place, but tell Karen, or if she's listening, I'm practicing sgraffito, which is carving in and then coloring. I'm actually coloring with underglazes, so it leaves a color in the place that I carve into the clay. Kind of experimenting with it. It's pretty cool.
I have 2 cups that I look at every day that are right at my table in my kitchen. It's Sunny made that are just beautiful.
Does Mickey let you use them?
No,
Tell you guys have to use them, and I'll make you more. If they break, if they die, they die.
I have these unbreakable, like you can do it yourself a 20-story building and it won't break.
Yeah. Well, listen, you guys, I know this is time to be with Cathy, so I'm going to duck out. I just want to say
Oh, what a nice surprise.
thank you so much for suggesting this, Cathy.
You're welcome.
A bit of joy, man. I love you both.
I love you too, honey. You take care.
All right. Have a
Thanks.
great time together. Mwah, love you.
Love you too.
Bye.
Thanks, babe. Yep. It's a beautiful community. Hey, let's play something else that you played on. I'm going to share the screen, and you're going to tell me which song to play. Excuse me. Don't worry about my cough, ladies and gentlemen. I have a chronic cough. I've had it for 20 years. Okay, so The End of a Love Affair with Pat, or Laughing at Life, or what was
Keep
first?
scrolling down. I just want to see whatever.
Look at how young he was there.
Well, that's the first album, so that was 1986.
Oh my God, you're a cute little young guy.
And that's actually vinyl. That was like an album cover. So
Yeah.
that's how long ago that was. Okay. All right. How about something from one? So the last smooth jazz album I did was the one called Express Delivery. So there's one called From the Hip.
Okay.
I mean, that's certainly, it ain't bebop. But that record still sounds good to me. I mean, considering what it was, and it was basically, smooth jazz. It was commercial music.
Yeah. Let's see. Wow, sounds good. That's so cool. So, it's interesting. It's interesting when, I mean, we all play various music, but it's interesting when you have, a good part of your career in two different styles, I mean, although, yeah, I was talking to Pat Kelly. He really played a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And you have kind of a similar thing going on, right? As Pat, like you've played a lot of different things.
Yeah, I mean, the first recording opportunity that I got here outside of being on somebody else's record was the opportunity to do these smooth jazz things. And it's like, I could have, I almost did just say, that's not really what I want to do because I wanted to play straight ahead stuff. But it was like, in retrospect, I'm really not sorry I did that at all. And I'm not ashamed of those records. It's like, I don't think it's necessarily my best playing from a creative standpoint in terms of blowing and improvising, but within the confines of what you could do in that style and still get airplay, I think we made some good music. And it was for me a chance to try to write and to try to. And George Shaw, that produced those things, is still a dear friend of mine. And I love him like as much as I love any person that I'm related to from when I was a kid. It's like he's great. And he's like, we had so much fun making those records and so many laughs. And there are so many moments that I remember where he would just come up with some kind of a great idea based on a tenth of what I was playing. He'd say, cut this out and don't do that and just do that, And we laughed, and it was those are great memories. And I had a lot of fun in those years, and we spent a lot of time in this studio behind his house in Belmont Shore that was a one-car garage. Making those records, and by this record, this was my fourth, but I had done something like 25, 26 different projects with him that were records, like for that company, in addition to a million other sessions of like God knows what. We were doing Muzak sessions and all kinds of stuff, and that's I really learned a lot. But he was one of the first people that figured out the whole thing of like, we were using a 24-track tape machine, and it was synchronized to like a sequencer and all of that stuff, and so all of that, and he'd be there like the mad scientist with all of the computers and all of the stuff, and I'd be thinking, I don't know what's going on, but he'd go, start playing now. Just, it was great fun, and I still to this day, it's like he was over here sitting right where I'm sitting, earlier in the year, showing me a whole bunch of stuff on Logic and helping me get my home recording thing together here, and just like, he's a prince. I just can't say enough good about him.
It's cool. Hey, so while it was playing, I went and got what I wanted to show you. So, so I have a box, a Thin Mint box, which these fit in perfectly. This was what my father had, right? So well, first of all, here's like an old index for 500 cards, right? And A through Z, this is what he had, and who knows when this was actually made. I don't know if it's, oh, well, copyright 1951. So here's what happens first. So it's the title, it's
Okay.
ASCAP or BMI, the date of the issue.
I know everything you're talking about. That's the story, Kath.
Yeah.
That card that you're holding was a business that was started by a guy in about like 1945 called Tune Decks, like index.
And here's what was on the
And on
back.
the reverse side, there's a lead sheet, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, originally, it was intended for, now here, spoiler alert. So if you don't want to hear this and you're going to read the book, then just turn your sound off. But this I consider to be the fascinating part. So that information that you're showing with all the publishing and all the, the copyright and all that stuff
Yeah.
was intended for people producing live shows, radio shows, right? No TV
Oh,
at this time. Live shows, radio shows. So when you're doing that, of course, you need to make sure that the people who own the copyrights get paid. There's all your information for that, right? And to
okay.
help you reference the tune, you got the bright idea to put like a mini lead sheet on the reverse side that had
Yeah,
the melody, the chord changes, and the lyrics, if
yeah,
there were lyrics, right?
yeah.
So somebody along the way, and you would subscribe to this. It was a service, Tune Decks. He'd send you 100 cards a month or whatever it was, right? And he'd do all the popular tunes of the day, and it was for working musicians. But then some working musician with a bit of a criminal mind got the bright idea that, hey, we're carrying around these like stacks of books and music and whatever that's like a huge pain in the ass to do on a gig. So if I made a book that had 3 of these things mimeographed, do you know what that was?
Yeah, that's why. Oh my
If I
God!
mimeographed this book, so I can show you the book.
That
Book that came from. I own several
yes.
of those hard copy books.
Me too. I have those books
And
too.
there's 3 of them on the page. That's where it came from. So that's what's so interesting to me about that story is it's like
Wow.
somewhere along the way, and he knew damn well what was going on, but his part of the income was the tune decks thing.
Yeah.
Right? This guy whose name I can't quite call to mind, having read the book 5 times, which is pathetic, but but anyway, and the business went on for a long time, but the fake book thing, that's one of the most famous storied fake books that there is. And we all bought it out of the trunk of somebody's car like we were buying dope or something.
Yeah.
For around $25, which was a lot of money.
That's so wild, man. That is really cool. Because at some point I thought, well, this looks exactly like these, what's in those books looks exactly like this. So that's what it was. And can you imagine somebody made history just by going, hey, what if I put 3 on a page,
Exactly. I mean, it was convenience. And it's the same thing as the whole real book. We all knew it was illegal, but now I have to show you this.
Isn't this interesting? I think it's fascinating. Oh, you don't know? I do not admit to knowing what a mimeograph is or was. Yeah.
It's just like a prehistoric photocopying.
I think he was saying that sarcastically.
All right, so here.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. That's what we're talking about. That's probably the oldest fake book ever, right?
So notice this is in like a binder, and then everybody will probably recognize the first page of the index.
Yep.
And it's got, it's all like
foreign songs
by style. You did foxtrots, Latin American tunes, foreign songs, hillbilly tunes, polkas, tango, stuff. It's like so. Yeah. And this copy of it, I had borrowed from a saxophone player friend of mine. And somewhere along the way, years later, I realized I still had the book, and I was mortified. And I called him and I said, I got to return it. And he said, I never used that. Keep it.
Ross Tompkins, the piano player, he gave me once, not a super huge book, but a book that a guy he knew had written out verses to songs that were not usually played or known, So I have this book of verses to songs that's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it's just the verses, or does it?
Just the verses, yeah.
Yeah. You know what's another really good resource for that? What would have been, the Chuck Shear New Reel book.
Yeah.
Right. So you needed volume 1. Well, the first one was called The World's Greatest Fake Book, which predates all of the New Reel books, right?
Yeah.
And then there's the New Reel book, volume 1, 2, and 3. And then the next one that came out was called The Standards Reel Book.
Yeah.
Has like tons of
verses. I know.
And they have good harmony, and they're accurate, and that is the best series, fake book series. If you're going to buy fake books, buy those.
I absolutely agree. Yeah. It's called the New Standards. Is that what it's called?
No, it's just called the Standards. Yeah. In the plural, Standards Reel Book.
Yeah, that was.
I don't know why he chose not to call it the New Reel Book Volume 4. That's what it was in the continuum, but he just called it.
He did us a favor, man. He did us a big favor.
And I see him at NAMM at JEN every year.
Yeah, yeah.
And I always say hi and hang out a little bit, and it's like, because we used to require our students to buy like a pile of fake books. It's they have to show up at the jury with like this wagon load of crap that we made them buy so that they have something to learn tunes from. But it's like, so I've known Chuck for a long time. He's a great cat, really a lovely guy.
Yeah. Let's see. What's your favorite guitar you have in your room? He's hesitant to say which is his
It depends
favorite.
on the.
The other ones will be
Well, I
upset.
mean, you know, there's
There's different reasons, right?
this
Yeah.
is this was handmade for me by a friend of mine who I was in bands with when I lived in Rhode Island.
Wow.
Right, his name is Mark Campolone. He lives in North Smithfield, Rhode Island. He's still in business, and he hand makes these guitars. That's what he does. But when I lived in Rhode Island in around 1970, I'm going to say six, I got in a band with him. It was like a four-piece band and a female vocalist. It was her band. And these were all really good players. And Mark was a guitarist. He is a very good guitarist, like a really good guitarist.
Yeah.
But he had switched to bass. And so he was the bass player. We had a keyboard player and a drummer and me on guitar. And so he was playing a bass that he had made himself. And this in 76. I don't know if you remember what alembic basses were.
Yeah, I remember that
And so
name.
it was a brand, and they were expensive, and most people played a Fender bass. You played a P bass or a jazz bass, and that was basically what everybody
Yeah.
had that played electric bass. He had this thing that he had made himself because he had started a repair business, and then he just decided he was going to build a bass, and he built this. And so when people would come up to him on gigs and say, "Hey, is that an alembic?" and he would say, "No, it's homemade." like it's a cake or something. I just always thought it was folksy and like homemade, like what? It's just a funny way to put it. And to this day, when he makes these
I'm
guitars,
sorry. Hold on one second. My husband wants something.
Thing for the house, the stuff up there.
Right here or
No,
here?
no, the whole big thing.
This?
Yes.
Okay. You could have come in. We could have seen your. We could have seen his pajamas.
very
You don't realize how many people are seeing that, but anyway, it doesn't really matter. So sorry.
So to this day, when he makes these, he makes them in groups of something like 7 or 8, which he calls a batch,
Oh,
like cookies.
yeah,
A batch.
yeah. Interesting.
Again, the folksy
It's
kind of
very,
like.
it's very artist like, right? Because the artist does kind of a series, and
Yeah.
then that's it, right?
He's
So
amazing.
could we actually see that guitar? Could we see that guitar? It's beautiful.
It's gorgeous, and this is an acoustic archtop that has like real acoustic sound. It's a really good acoustic archtop with a floating pickup. So what drove me nuts about playing this with a group or with a band with a rhythm section is like if you're standing close to your amp, it fed back a lot. So that was a pain.
Yeah.
And it has a floating pickup, and I'm used to built-in pickups, so there's the response characteristics are different as well. So I mostly play this when I can play it without bothering to plug it into an amplifier at all, which I've found out online works really great. I mean,
Yeah.
things on Sunday on Facebook, and it's like I started off trying to have a whole bunch of sound in the room and a microphone in front of, like as though I was miking a band and all that stuff, and it was distorting. So the softer I got, the better I sounded. So that's about as soft as you can get, is to play like a real acoustic guitar pretty close to a halfway decent microphone.
Did you say are you currently doing Sunday concerts?
For the last 10 weeks, I've been doing Sundays at 4 here for about an hour.
I didn't know. I'm writing that down.
So, and it's kind of a Potenza meeting. It's kind of like, so my relatives from all over the country get online and I play mostly requests, which in some cases are tunes that I haven't thought of in years, and so it's kind of a fun challenge. And then in some cases, there are always the tunes that you just look at and you go, I would never play that, but you don't have to say it. In a club, if somebody came up and asked you to play whatever it was that you hate, and you might have to go, get away from me, or offensive. But some of them I just ignore, and some of them are just like great suggestions of things that I would never have played, or something that I just haven't thought of in literally 40 years or something.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's
But
cool.
anyway, so that's my favorite guitar of that kind of, and the other one is this, which is kind of my main instrument, which is again a handmade archtop. Now this is an electric guitar. So
Yeah.
this was made by a guy named James Mapson, who lives in Santa Ana, and he's an engineer, and he's just one of those like disgustingly talented people that can do anything
Yeah.
and figure anything out. And he was a scratch golfer when he was into golf, and then he built and drove race cars, two of which used to be in his shop until he finally sold them to make room.
Wow.
But he has an engineering business in Santa Ana, and he also is like the same M on this headstock appears on his line of wines, fine wines that he produces in Napa. You know what I mean? It's just like everything he does. You just go, how, how did that happen? So anyway, he we were somewhere. I can't remember if it was NAM or whatever, and we were in a conversation about whatever, and I was introduced to him, and then he saw me on a gig, and he said, "Why do you play that cheap guitar?" I was playing a $400 archtop, and I said, "Because I own it. It's paid for. You know why?" And he said, "Well, it sounds good." He said, but would you be interested in something more?" However he characterized it. Bottom line, expensive, and I kind of pretty much blew him off. But in subsequent weeks, months, whatever, we ran into each other a few times, and I eventually kind of thought, yeah, it might be kind of cool, because I had been to his place by then, and he was making basically the same guitar from Mundell Low. And Mundell's main requirement was it cannot feed back. So Jim designed a whole bracing system for it that basically immobilizes the top. So this, in contrast, has next to no acoustic sound, but it's a really good, completely overbuilt electric guitar.
Huh.
So this is my main instrument. This is the one that I've played, and I've had this since 2000. I got this in August of 2000, and I waited 2 full years to the day from when I said make it to when I picked it up.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is the third custom-made instrument that I've had made that I finally didn't miss anything.
Yeah.
Because when you have anything, I don't know if you've ever had a dress made or anything like that, and it's like, invariably there's something that along the way you go, "Ooh, can we?" And the person goes, "Too late." So that happened to me, especially with the first guitar. The first guitar Mark made for me, Mark Kimball, was a solid body. And we came up with a design and this whole thing, and then along the way, I had a number of those moments where I'd go, "Oh, wait a minute, can you?" And he'd just look at me and he'd go, "Too late." And so when I got it, I already didn't like it. There were already things about it that I didn't know. And it was like, and so I thought, all right, well, I learned a lot from doing this, but in the end, I have an instrument that I paid rather a lot of money for that I'm not in love with, and I wound up selling it eventually. So, third time's the charm, or whatever the cliche is, or fifth time's the charm. So,
Yeah.
on this instrument, I was there, like, so he'd call me up and he'd say, "I'm getting ready to set the neck, or do you want?" And I'll be right there. He's 16 miles away from me, and I'd drive down and I'd sit there and I'd give him my input and whatever. So, by the time I picked it up, it was like I knew what I was getting. It was like,
How much do the price of a handmade guitar, do they really vary quite a bit?
yeah, and it depends on. I mean, some people get $50,000 for something like this. And I'm not going to pay that.
Yeah.
And Jim's prices were like remarkably lower than that, and he gave me such an accommodation price that it would be embarrassing to mention it. I mean, this is worth many times what I paid for it, especially this many years later. But I
Yeah.
would never part with it. It's like
Yeah.
I'll probably die with this in my hands.
Or be buried with it, like your mom was buried with
Yeah,
the
I don't think that would be fair. I like to leave it.
pictures. Yeah, you can't scan it. Hey, so we haven't even talked about who you've played with. Um, so let's talk about who you've played with. What was your first big gig?
Big or
Well, important. With somebody more well known than you.
the first while I was still in New England, and I played with Little Anthony
Oh, wow.
one night at the Groton Naval Base. It was like a one-off thing, and I had I co-led a band that was like six-piece band with two horns, and we were playing Sunday nights steady in the one jazz club in Providence that I pretty much lived in for the last 4 years. I lived in Providence.
Oh, wow.
I was there every night.
Yeah.
If I wasn't playing, I was there anyway. If I was only there for last call, I was there every night. I, you know. So we were playing there, and I think it was the piano player that I co-led it with that got some kind of a call, and Little Anthony needs a band to play, and we did that. So that was the one time that I played with him. It was like the tears on my pillow guy. It was like kind of sort of sit there playing and marveling that I'm here with the tears on my pillow guy kind of thing. So, but I mean, in the end, it was like, it wasn't as much fun as the Sunday night thing that we had, because like we were playing our arrangements and our original music in some cases. And it was like, that was really what we were wanting to do. But, we had steady Sunday night that we were getting paid next to nothing to do. And it wasn't paying, well, actually it was paying the rent. In those years, my rent was $35 a month.
Oh, yeah. Wow.
Because I was living in a house with 5 other musicians. That was like a 3-decker house, and everybody had their own room and whatever. But $35 a month. So you play one stupid gig and you were okay as far as like that. And I was living close enough to my family that I could go over so and so's house for dinner and so and so's house to wash my clothes.
Yeah,
And,
right.
so, the whole sort of like sponge off everybody in the family kind of thing. But the drag about that house was that so Sunday nights, sometimes it seemed like it always happened on a Sunday night. So we'd finish our gig at 1:00, pack out, whatever, drive home, which was only 10 minutes. You get home and the oil had run out, which means there's no heat.
Oh, God.
There has been no heat since we left. So
Oh.
now the house is like stone cold and you can see your breath in it. And so my room had a closet that was in the hallway right outside. So I just go out to the closet, I take all the clothes that were on the hangers and put them on the bed and then get under that and go to sleep.
Because it was cold.
And you could,
Yeah.
it's like the dead of winter.
Yeah.
You couldn't get anybody to come out until the next day to
Yeah.
fill the oil tank, whatever it was.
Yeah.
And so those are some of the less pleasant memories, and part of the reason why I live here now in this unbearable heat, as opposed to that unbearable cold.
Okay, and then what was you've played with some amazing people. So how did that
Yeah,
occur?
when I got to California, I actually had a gig before I got here at Maiden Voyage. Remember that place?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, and
Wait, where was that?
Wilshire Boulevard,
Yeah.
kind of near where the Ambassador Hotel was.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Okay.
there around,
Yeah.
and yeah, and that paid like $25, I think, or something. So that was booked before I even got here with my friend's band, the saxophone player that I kept his fake book.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, and that was in like late 1980. I came here in November of 1980, so it was either it was in November 1980 or December,
Yeah.
right? And then I had 2 months off. So, these were the years where like, all right, so now I don't know anybody anymore. And it's like, except for him. And so, but it turned out that he got a record deal and we played gigs at Carmelo's. And so I started kind of getting in the scene and playing at Dante's with that band and meeting people and just, trying to sort of circulate with the jazz with anybody, in music. And sitting in with people wherever I could. And, that's how I met George Shaw that I talked about. I had met Sherman Ferguson, was a dear friend of mine, and I had met him I went to Carmelo's and I thought, all right, well, in Providence, I used to play as a guest soloist with the House Trio. That was my in to that jazz club in Providence, right?
Yeah.
So Straseri, Frank played a lot with like his trio playing with Pete Chrisley or his trio playing with whatever, and they would like play that guy's stuff. And I thought, there's my in. So I went to Frank in Carmelo's and I said, I pitched him and he said, well, I don't know you. He said, so why don't you come down to my Sunday gig and play? And we'll see what happens. He was playing at the Studio Cafe in Balboa. So I go to Balboa the next Sunday, and I walk in. I don't know who I'm looking at, and he's playing with a trio. And he goes, and I come up, and he calls a couple of tunes. We play a set, whatever we play, and then he starts introducing the band. He goes, on bass, Frank De La Rosa. And I went, Frank De La Rosa? I knew him. And he goes on drums, Sherman Ferguson. And I was stunned. I turned around, and I distinctly remember saying, the Pat Martino guy? And he did this. Guitar players all say the same thing. And we just became fast friends. I mean, it was like I just thought, the guy on the Pat Martino records is sitting here playing the drums. So that just amazed me. And now this is right after I got here, and I'm just going to places. So he said, okay, go to the Jazz Safari, Al Williams,
Yeah.
right? I didn't know him at the time. He said the Jazz Safari was a club in the Alpine Village right across from the Queen Mary.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
He said, so I just told him I was looking for places to sit in to meet people. And he says, okay, you go to the Jazz Safari, you find Al Williams, he's the drummer, he's the leader of the house band, and he owns the club. Tell him I told you to come play. Right? So I did. That's how I met George Shaw. He was in the house band. Right?
Yeah.
So George walks up to me after I play and offers me a job teaching at Long Beach City College.
Oh.
And I said, no thanks. He goes, well, don't want to. He said, you seem like you could. I said, no, I came here to play. I'm looking for opportunities to play. That's really what I'm here for, or whatever. And he said, well, at least come check our program out. He said, we're doing a concert. He had like a big band series that they had brought in, like David Baker and David Sanborn and like all these different Clark Terry and all these great soloists with the student big band, right? And they're doing these concerts. And he said, we're doing one with Patrice Rushen, who I was a fan of.
Yeah.
And I said, really? And he said, yeah, here's a couple of tickets. So my wife and I go, and we watch this concert take place. And I just thought, this is cool. Yeah. So I started teaching this guitar and bass class, which was, I co-taught with a bass player, had 60-something people in it. So that was kind of brain damage, but that was my end. And I eventually kind of got to the point where I had a full-time, whatever they called it, adjunct load, which was 9 hours a week of teaching.
Yeah.
So some of it was class, some of it was ensemble, and a couple of private students and whatever. And it was just enough that it was worth my while, and it wasn't taking up too much of my time. I did everything on 2 days a week, and it was great. But George, the guy that hired me, eventually got a deal with the record company that I had already done a record with the saxophone guy, and then I did his record on spec with the provision that if things went well, he'd spin me off a solo deal, which he did. And I did 4 records of my own and 23 others for that production company, that record company. And just George and I just basically became joined at the hip because we were always together in that little garage making recordings. And so that was like, I mean, when you think of it, Sherman sending me there and me meeting George, that completely changed my whole, what I was doing and hooked me up with a whole bunch of, so the concerts that George was doing in 1984, he said, hey, you know Joe Pass, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he goes, you think he'd come and do one of these? And I asked him, and there was a negotiation thing, and it's like he eventually agreed to it, so we did that one, which is where that Cherokee recording that you looked at online comes from. The Dizzy recording was another concert in 1984 where Dizzy was coming in, going to play with the student big band, and some of these guys specifically said, I'll play with the student big band, but I need a pro rhythm section. In which case, George would look at me and say, do you want to play with Dizzy? It's like, do you have to ask?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I got to be around all of that stuff as somebody playing in the concerts. And there was a huge like television production program. So all of the students would be involved in camera work and filming and production and all of that stuff. And it was in like a 900-seat auditorium, which was usually full in Long Beach at City College. And it just was a great time. I mean, those early 80s were like, I just thought, how did this happen?
Yeah.
I was amazed. So, and that led to, so Ronnie Laws came in. Now, Pat Kelly, who's probably still watching, I had seen him come to City College as part of Pat's band. And then when Ronnie made a return to City College, Pat was no longer with him, and George said, "Do you want to play in Ronnie's rhythm section?" I said, "Sure." So Bobby Lyle and all these people. It's like, so I met Wilton Felder and Joe Sample, who eventually played on one of my records, and just this whole circle of people that were kind of involved with all of them. And Ndugu, right? And it just became this whole thing that sort of introduced me to a whole bunch of people that, I mean, I wound up touring with Ronnie for about a year after that. And that was like, I think 84, 85 or something. And so I had all these great opportunities as a result of taking this teaching gig.
Wow.
And, I mean, my major at Berkeley was music education, but it was like, it was a fallback for me. I mean, it's just like I wanted to
Yeah.
play, and somebody somewhere along the way just said, yeah, well, if you had some kind of education credential of some kind, then you could always get a gig teaching in like a junior high school or something, so I did my practicum teaching in a high school and a little bit in a junior high school and then a very little bit in an elementary school, and I just went,
No.
no, this is not me. I
Yeah.
can't do this.
Yeah.
I mean, the junior high school kids were trying to run the same scams on me that I had been part of not too many years before myself on the other side of the aisle. So I just thought, I can't have this. This is not what I want to do with my life. So that's why when George asked me if I wanted the teaching gig, I said, no, thanks. But it turned out great. And it's one of those sort of weird circumstances where, and I'm sure you've heard many stories like this, where people are offered things and they go, sure, okay, I'll try it. And it turns out to be this massive, like Alan Silvestri, right? Alan Silvestri was a student at Berkeley and was a year or two ahead of me. And he was a good guitar player. He was a good jazz guitar player, probably still is. And I used to think, this guy's good. Because in those years, I'm going to Jimi Hendrix concerts and, smoking whatever I might have been smoking. And,
Yeah.
I wasn't really much of a jazz player at all. And it wasn't something that I was really chasing that hard until towards the end of my time at Berkeley. But anyway, so Alan then moves to Los Angeles, and somewhere along the way, somebody offers him the opportunity to do a score for a film, which he had never done, and he could very well have said, well, I can't do that, I don't do that, no thanks. But he said yes, and kind of worked out good.
Kind of.
So I mean, there's a million stories of just stuff where just something happens, and I'm sure everybody here watching has some kind of a similar thing where and in some cases it's just desperation. I mean, it's like I didn't have a thing going on, and the little bit of money that I had brought with me was gone in a couple of months, and it was like I went from I play jazz and you can kiss my shoes to please give me a gig of any kind. So.
Yeah. So did you go on the road? You went on the road with it was
Gene?
Gene Harris, yeah.
Yeah, so we go all the way through the City College stuff, and I was there until 95.
Wow.
And then I got the job at USC.
Okay.
So, and again, that was like for the 5 years previous to that, I was still at City College, but I had been there for quite a long time, and I was seeing the people that had full-time jobs that had health insurance and benefits and all that stuff that I didn't have as adjunct, and it became something that I wanted.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, here I'm putting in some of the time. If I put in a little more time and got a full-time thing, that would be kind of more of a security kind of thing. So,
Did you become the chair right away?
no. I mean, when I in 90 was when I made it known at City College that I would like to see some kind of full-time opportunity, and I'm not going to say they were lying to me, but the funding just never came year after year after year until finally I got more than a little bit of an attitude about it. And then Jeff Kalala came to my house for dinner. Do you know Jeff?
Yeah.
And he said, hey, have you seen because he was looking around at jobs and whatever. He said, have you seen the listing at USC? He said, looks just like you. And I said, no, this is on a Sunday night. And so after he left, I get online and I find what he's talking about. And I called Richard Smith, who was the chair at the time. And there was a week left to the deadline. And he said, do you need more time? I can extend the deadline. He says, I'm chair on the search committee. I said, no, I'm good. And then I hung up and I thought, I don't even have a resume, and so it was a week of like scraping together everything I could, and long story short, so I got all that stuff in. I drove up there, I dropped it off, and I wound up getting that job. So, and I really didn't think I had a snowball's chance in hell of getting it, but it just turned out that they hired me, and so the whole "be careful what you wish for" thing. It was just like, to me, it was an exercise in finding out what is involved in applying for this sort of job, and I got the first one that I applied for. So, and it's worked out great. It's been nothing but great,
Yeah.
and I've
Yeah.
met so many great people and had so many great experiences there, and it's an amazing place.
So, what Pat Kelly says, Frank and I were the last two standing to be picked to be the chair at USC. It was a great choice that Frank got the position.
No, there was, and he couldn't have been more gracious. He was one of the competitors at the end, and there was one other guy. But I mean, again, because of the fact that he had already been there, and this other guy had been educated there, and I just thought, well, they're not going to hire me. I guess I had the right qualifications for somebody, some of the people in the search committee that thought it was a good idea, and it turned out great. And I've gotten to, I've been blessed to have spent all the time I got to spend with Pat and to circulate with him and to know him better, and he's a prince.
Yeah, he is.
So, that's been great. But in '96, I got the gig with Gene Harris. Ron Eshtay had done it for a long time, and he had a personal reason why he wanted to not be out of town so much at the time, and so he jumped off, and Luther Hughes was instrumental in getting me on, and it was like, so I started doing that in '96 in the fall, I guess it was, and I did it until the end of '99,
Uh-huh.
and
And that was great, right?
oh man, yeah, that was. I mean, Gene didn't tell you anything. I mean, there was no set list. There was no conversation. There was no, we're going to do this, we're gonna, whatever. The first gig I played with him, I showed up in Toronto on a flight, and it was the Du Maurier Jazz Festival. And, Luther had told me, yeah, here, listen to these records, and here are a few of the arrangements and whatever that he always does. And, so I had some idea, and I had done my homework. But basically, I walked into the lobby of the hotel and walked up to him and hugged him. He kind of looked at me like I was kind of a strange hippie or something. And then the next time I saw him, we were on stage, and he's counting off the first tune. And that's the way it went the whole time I was with him. It's like you didn't know what he was going to play. I mean, he had his favorites, and he had his crowd pleasers and all that stuff. But every once in a while, he'd just play something, and you just have to figure out what it was and play.
Yeah.
And I loved it. He just gave me so much encouragement and so much opportunity to, you could play as many choruses as you want. He hardly ever said anything about, I don't like this or whatever. I mean, for the most part, it was just like, you sound great, and just, let it fly and have a good time, and, don't hold back.
Who was on drums?
In the beginning, it was Paul Humphrey, and then later, well, not too much later, Paul Krybick replaced him. So
Yeah.
I had a long history with Paul. I had a long history with Luther. So on the road, it was just the Three Stooges. It's just,
Oh my God, I can't even
it's so
imagine.
much fun. I mean, it's just fun.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that, and it all ended when Gene died in early 2000. And it's like, it just was, I was heartbroken, and I still think of that and miss that, how much fun we used to have with that band. It was just so much fun.
Yeah. Did you ever play with his daughter?
Oh yeah. I knew Nikki was a student at City College.
Oh.
So she was in like she was actually one of the background singers in the Patrice concert that I went to before I even worked there.
Oh.
She was a student, and they used a bunch of students that sang background to some of the Patrice stuff. So that's how far back I go with her. And
Yeah.
then when I got with Gene, and she had done the whole Madonna thing and all the stuff that she did, but then Gene, whenever she was available, would always have her come up and sing, and he just got the biggest kick out of watching her, like, she'd just take over. You know what I mean? It was like Gene became a forgotten entity at some point, and there was the Nikki Harris show, and it was like he just loved it. It was so much fun watching him react to. She just would completely just like dominate the situation. It was really great fun.
Yeah. Yeah. I first learned of her through Karen Hammock, who played with her a lot, you know.
Yeah. Some
Yeah,
of those gigs with Karen. I haven't seen Karen in a long time, but yeah, we played some of those gigs.
yeah, yeah. That's cool. Let's see. Oh, somebody, I think it was Taylor. He said, "I'm sure you get asked." Uh, well, there's two questions. Taylor always asks good questions. One is, being that you're a jazz educator in a highly recognized music program, can you talk about anything you wished jazz education would emphasize more? And he also said, you probably get asked this a lot, but can you talk about how Joe Pass became a figure in your life?
Okay. Um, all right. So the easier question is Joe. I met Joe in 1974, and I've told this story in a couple of different public places. But basically, I was at Berkeley until '72. So the last 2 years I was there, I was in ensembles, one of which was led by a saxophonist. And so he would direct the ensemble, and a lot of times the two horn players didn't show up, which meant that there were two guitar players and a piano trio. And so the guitar players would be basically now replacing the horns as far as playing the melody, playing harmony parts of the melody, whatever, you know. And so he would like rail on us about how our phrasing wasn't anything like, can't you play like horn players? Can't you play like, and then he'd just start naming names and can't you play like, you know, like Herb Ellis or Joe Pass? And I looked at the kid next to me, the other guitar player, and I went, who's Joe Pass? It's like, it's just like 1970. It's like, I don't know who he is. So on the way home, I went to Strawberries. Remember Strawberries, the record
Yeah, I
store?
do. I do.
So they went on like Boylston near Mass Ave.
Yeah.
And I would go in I find the bin, there's Joe Pass. And so I find Intercontinental. I buy it. I come home and I play it. I go, oh man, it's this just great trio record with Eberhard Weber playing bass and Kenny Clear, and I just thought, oh, you know, I was just ready to hear it at that point. Whereas if you had played it for me 2 years ago, I would have said, oh guys.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that basically just kind of became something that I was really interested in was the whole notion of playing with no keyboard support, no other guitar player, no whatever, and just that was like a real challenge. And then in the early '70s, after I got out of school, then the Pablo label started, and the first three Pablo releases I got were Virtuoso, which was solo guitar, which was even worse as far as like I can't do anything remotely related to this. It's amazing. And so there's Virtuoso, Take Love Easy, which is the first duet with Ella,
Yep.
and the trio with Oscar Peterson and Nils Pedersen, which is like a horrendously burning trio record with no drums.
Yeah.
Right? So and now I'm thinking, all right, I thought the guy was good with the Intercontinental. This is like amazing stuff. So now he's touring, playing solo concerts. So he came to the Jazz Workshop in Boston in '74, and my father was a big fan of music, and so I took him. And we went and sat right in the front and watched him play a whole solo set. And then I went into his dressing room afterwards, and I said, do you have any time during the day where you could give lessons? And he gave me some kind of smart answer, like, yeah, I don't have any girlfriends here, or whatever cocky thing he said. And the next day I went to the Hotel Lenox, which was right across the street, and which oddly enough was where my folks went for their honeymoon. And had breakfast with him, and then we went up to his room, and I took a lesson, and just, I sat down, and he said, play something. And I played something, and he says, what's wrong with that? Well, because he knew I guess we had a conversation in at breakfast where I told him I had gone to Berkeley, so he was suspicious that he had nothing he could show me, or
Yeah.
what do you want from me, or kind of thing, which was completely stupid. I mean, it's like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so I played something, and then that at least gave me sort of a way to start a dialogue back and forth with him, and we just kind of went from there. So that was 1974, and then in the documentary on the making of that album, tribute album I did to him. So now we go outside, and I said, "What do I owe you?" And he told me, and I counted out my cash, and I handed it to him, and he looked at me and he said, "Okay, I'm going to take your money, and I'm going to walk down Boylston Street and buy a new pair of shoes." And he was wearing dress shoes with no socks, and he turned up one of his feet, and he had a big hole in the bottom of one of the soles of his shoes, like a complete, like, wide open hole. And he was going down the street to buy new shoes with my dough. So
And there it is. There's your future.
yeah. So yeah, I never thought about it that way, but so then that's 1974. So then now I would be in New York playing, and he would be playing at like the Village Gate or someplace like that. And so I'd finish my gig, I'd go over, catch his last show, and say hi and remember myself to him. It's like, oh yeah, yeah. He says, hey, why don't you come by my hotel? I'm at the Barbizon Plaza, and we'll play. And I go over there and we play, and whatever. So that happened a few times, and then I moved to California in 1980, and I called him, and lived in Northridge. And I said, I'm here. And he goes, really? I said, yeah, I moved to Los Angeles and whatever. And we just started hanging out at Pisano's a lot, because I knew he was a dear friend of Pisano's, and John would have these hangs at his house where we just all go over and eat and play and hang around.
Yeah.
So, by that time, it wasn't like I was studying with him or anything. It was just, but I got to be around him a lot and play with him a lot, because we'd be at Pisano's, and the guitars would come out, and the wine, and the, cigars, and it was like, what are you playing that chord for? Kind of stuff. So, we all got to take plenty of abuse from him that way, but it was just great being able to hang out and run errands and eat.
Eat. I want to ask a question about, because I've always been highly amused at, like, 90-year-old guitar players can see each other and say, hey, look at this new voicing I found. And I just want to know, why can you play a guitar for 70 years and still find new voicings?
Why?
Why? I mean, how is that mechanically? Like, haven't you been through all of them, or no? I guess you haven't.
No, some of us, I have a sort of like recurring return to basics, or in some cases you discover by doing a chord melody, you have to reinvent the wheel, because there's this one note that you want to harmonize, but you can't find the right voicing, and then you find the voicing, and then you realize, this is just a drop two inversion, or it's just this, or it's just that. And that sort of leads you off again on this whole sort of quest of like, well, wait a minute, I'm not making anywhere near as much use of that whole thing as I could, right? Or you'll watch somebody else play the same tune that you play and harmonize it, and you'll go, whoa, what did they do there? And it's either a reharmonization, or it's like some kind of a voicing that uses some kind of, like, if you've ever seen John Stoll play, and John's got all those voicings with the close seconds in them and stuff, and you just go, what is that? And so it's like, it's like an obsession with, like, just having something new to be able to use as a tool to harmonize a melody note, whether it's part of the melody or part of something you're playing as an improvised line or something like that. And it's like, it's just never ending.
Yeah.
And we're obsessed with that. Guitar players are obsessed with that. But somebody made a really funny observation. So somebody online in one of the jazz guitar groups was saying something about asking a question about the chord melody style, chord-melody style of playing guitar, which is...
Is this like a Ted Green kind of chord melody?
It's just harmonizing a melody. So instead of playing a single line, you're playing a harmonized line, right? And so they said, oh yeah, on guitar it's called chord melody, or it's called this, or whatever it's like. And somebody made the rather brutal observation, on piano it's called playing the piano. That's the kind of bottom line on all of it. I mean, piano players are so comfortable with the notion of playing a line and harmonizing it and all of that stuff, whereas guitar players in the beginning get sort of stuck with the notion of, I'm either playing single lines, which I can play blazingly fast, or I'm playing accompaniment of some kind. Okay, so there's the whole, from the rock era, it's lead guitar, rhythm guitar. All right, so if you could play lead guitar, then that would probably put you kind of more out in front of the band, because you're getting more attention because you're playing all this screaming solo single line stuff, whereas the other guy's just sort of playing the chordal background. So, that ceases to exist once you get to a certain level of obsession with playing harmonized lines on the guitar. And it's like, it's hard. It's like brain damage, but it's fun, and it's an obsession. So, the more you get into it and the more you buy books, like I love looking at books that are written on books on harmony by pianists or by arrangers because they're not thinking about the guitar. They're just writing good voicings that are voice led well. And you play a sequence of these two voicings and it just completely rocks your world as far as like, wait a minute. It's like a good piano player's left hand. You know what I mean? Whereas guitar players, we're moving familiar grips up and down the neck, like, sort of the Cro-Magnon man kind of concept. And it's like, all right, well, that's a very fundamental way of moving harmony around the guitar. But, when you get into intricate voice leading and just like keep two common tones and move these two one half step each way, and boom, there's the next chord, and you just go, oh man, that's gorgeous. It's like, well, any piano player would go, yeah, that's de rigueur. That's what we do, right? But, for guitar players, it takes us a long time. Well, some of us, I'm speaking for myself, it takes us a long time to arrive at the level of comfort of using harmony that way that a good piano player deploys his left hand.
Yeah.
And, just kind of,
Yeah, it's not.
the instrument.
I mean, the better you want to play guitar. I have always thought it's a super challenging instrument, unless you're just into the sound and single lines or rhythm, I guess. But when you start actually getting into the guitar, it's a super challenging instrument.
Yeah, I mean, I've had piano players, and I have the deepest and most abiding respect for piano players because I know more unbelievably capable pianists, like the guy I talked about from when I was a kid. That like, okay, what key? Yeah, whatever. Boom, 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 and there we go. Right? Any key, anything you need. Most guitar players don't have that level of facility with harmony that a really accomplished pianist has.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that's kind of the holy grail as far as like, if you want to play this style. And it doesn't appeal to some people. Like I said, when I was a kid, it was old guys. Nothing
yeah,
I'm interested in.
yeah.
And now I'm still obsessed with it. It's like there is just so much to learn and so much to know. And the only thing that's kept me from going entirely mad is that the best way to make sure that you're learning that stuff is to learn songs. So
Yeah.
when I go on a gig, nobody cares what degrees I have, what I'm going to play as far as calculated scales or anything like that. It's just what songs are you playing? So the more songs I know, the better I am at applying all of this stuff that I'm trying to digest. And that's basically my message to guitarists. It's like play songs, learn songs, do something with the songs, get in depth with the songs harmonically. And it's like you'll be obsessed for life.
That's kind of leads right into, anything you wish jazz education would emphasize more, right?
Well, I mean, our program is different. I'm talking about the USC studio guitar program. It's different from a jazz studies program in that we do use jazz, and it is partly a jazz studies program because jazz is the lingua franca, but, guitar is so all pervasive in pretty much any kind of popular music you can find that there is a lot of stuff that wouldn't be covered in a traditional jazz studies program in our core curriculum that is what makes it valuable and unique. So we've always felt it's from long before I got there. It was like that was the philosophy. It was like, yeah, you're not just playing jazz. You are playing jazz, and you want to be good at that. And you also, and this is all right. So the thing that keeps coming up as a topic as far as like what we're equipping our students with is like there are many good student jazz players that can't find work. Okay, so it's equally important, and this is something that we're focusing on now, and that a lot of jazz studies programs and whatever instrumental programs are focusing on is like there's the whole notion that all you need to be able to do is one thing well, and that makes it really hard on you. So the what's been referred to as the Swiss Army knife approach. So if you have the capability to record yourself and you know something about Pro Tools or you know something about Logic or you know something about whatever digital audio workstation allows you to record yourself and operate, especially now online, remote, to be able to do sessions where somebody sends you a file, you put guitar parts on it, a bass part on it, whatever you're going to do, you can stay busy that way, and that allows you to produce your own music, and it just opens up tons of avenues for you in terms of income, the same way that the whole Alan Silvestri, you want to do a film score, well, I'm sure I'll try it.
Yeah.
So that whole notion of don't just be good at just the one thing. You can be great at jazz, and if that's your obsession, then run with that. Do the best that you can with it, and hopefully you will become the next George Benson or Wes Montgomery or whatever it is. But in case that doesn't happen for you next week and you still need to pay your rent and eat, these other skills will serve you well. So yeah, that's what I think is the most valuable, and it's nothing that's any kind of revolutionary. Gee, nobody ever thought of that. Everybody says that now, but it's like
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. It's like the
Yeah.
more skills you have, the better off you are in terms of being able to make a living in music. And part of my income comes from teaching, part of it comes from playing, part of it comes from a bunch of different sources. And that's what basically, until I got to the point where I had enough going on in any one particular area to say, okay, I don't have to do so much of that other thing that I don't really love anyway. That's what saved me as far as like being able to, and in some cases the same thing. People would say, can you do this? Can you program a drum machine? And I'd go, sure. And then I'd go buy a drum machine and figure it out and get paid for helping them program the drum machine for the track they were doing on a 4-track cassette machine, right? So things like that have been, what's the saying? Desperation is a great motivator. It's like I needed that money, so I went and got the drum machine and figured it out. And that's what we have to be good at. You have to find ways of being able to use your skills, musical and otherwise, to be able to, kind of make a living so you don't have to go work at some day job, which I also I've spent 7 years of my life working in a factory, melting the bottoms onto tennis shoes. Not fun.
Oh yeah, 7 years is a long time.
Yeah. So, this is a lot more fun. And it pays.
I was talking to Roy McCurdy Sunday, and he was saying, there was this, which is cool because I've known Roy for a long time, and he really, actually talking to him in my earlier years was really helpful because I was going through first marriage stuff, and he was very supportive talking to me. And so he was married first to a woman, and they had a baby, and he had already been a well-known player playing with, I think he had already played with Benny Golson and Art Farmer, and so there was a point where his wife said she didn't want him to be on the road. She wanted him to be the 9 to 5 guy. So he went back to Rochester, and he tried for 9 months. And he was sitting around his living room with his buddies, and a call came from Cannonball, and Cannonball wanted him to play, and he held the phone, hey guys, it's Cannon, and they all were like, you motherfucker, you better fucking take that gig. That's it. You got to take that gig. So he did, and got a divorce and moved on. But yeah, I mean.
Yeah, I love him. I just get the biggest kick out of, like, I look at him and I just think the guy on Mercy, 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 among many other things, but gee.
Oh God, I know. And we saw a video of him with blood, sweat, and tears. It was smoking. He was so smack in the pocket, it was great.
He's a treasure.
Yeah, he really is a treasure. Well, believe it or not, it's been 2 hours.
Wow.
I always say that. Believe it or not, it's been 2 hours. Hey, I wanted to ask you one thing, though, Frank. I wanted to ask you, was there something, I don't know, was there ever like something, maybe one thing that happened to you? I'm sure there were more than one thing, but something that was rough to go through that you went through, got to the other side, and looking back at it, I'm talking about musically or, career-wise, something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've had my ups and downs as far as like feeling like I'm killing it or the exact opposite. And most musicians go through the height and depth of all of that stuff. But, leaving Providence on the one hand was my choice, and it was something that I wanted to do, and I had been talking about it for a long time. But to actually leave my family, like I remember getting in the van that took me to Logan Airport that day and looking out of the back windows and seeing my family stand in the driveway there, and it was like, that still breaks my heart to think. And every time I went home, when I'd leave, my mother would she'd be a wreck. And so, just to have missed those years, those last years of their lives, except for the visits home and all of that stuff. It's like, I definitely gave up something because I have a big family that's really close, and I'm one of the. It's not like nobody's left, but most of them have stayed around Providence and New England and all of that stuff. And it's like, I had to find out, and I had talked about it for years. I had to find out whether or not I could have any more of a career than I had there, because I had a pretty good career going there, but I was just looking at the guys that were 20 years older than me and just thinking, well, there I am in 20 years. And it's like, and I've never lived in New York. I never lived in Los Angeles or whatever. And I had to try a big city and see what was going on. And then I met my wife, who was home visiting she was is from Massachusetts. She came home to visit. I met her in that club that I lived in. And she said she lived in Southern California. And I went, you do? And so shortly after I came out to visit her here, and she was living in Orange County, and we went to the Baked Potato, went to Dante's, went to all my places I wanted to see, and I just thought, that's it, sign me up. And a year later, I moved out. And so, you could say I was chasing a woman more than a career, but it was kind of a combination of the both. And basically, I don't know if I'd still be here if it wasn't for her, because after my few $100 that I came out here ran out, she basically kind of like paid the bills until I got hooked up with some kind of income. So
Yeah.
it was hard to leave my family, and I still miss them, and I still have a really very close family. Those who are still living, I'm still very close to, but I don't get to see them that much.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
You didn't ask me to play the egg.
I know. I sure love you, man. Somebody just asked me something, and I got a little paranoid real quickly. I'm supposed to be on an Italian podcast, and I could have sworn I wrote down the date and time, and I don't see it. So now I'm a little paranoid. Like,
Okay, so we should all ask, get far!
what the hell? Where was that? When was I supposed to do that? I'll have to go look. Roland, if you know, tell me. Oh, whoa! I don't know, man. I don't know where that went. Before I get off, I will tell everybody you do not have to wait for that extremely exciting information of when I will be on the Italian podcast. So we're saying bye, Barry. Thanks for hanging out, Barry Zweig. We didn't even talk about him, but that's cool. Tomorrow, I'm going to have on Katia Morades. Oh, God, I can never pronounce her name. I haven't done it
Take
enough.
you out tomorrow.
She's such a fabulous Brazilian singer. I mean,
Yeah.
And she's also a great painter.
Huh.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. So anyway, she's a very experienced person. Saturday, I'm going to have Ralph Humphrey, and Sunday, I'm going to have Jennifer Lightham. And Friday, I'm not sure if I'm having Barbara Morrison, possibly. Anyway, so yeah, thank you. Thanks for doing this. And oh, by the way,
Thank you.
a week from today, I'm having my 100th show.
Wow.
Isn't that amazing? So I decided to have a special guest. Me. So I'm going to be interviewed.
Okay. Are you interviewing yourself?
No, Catherine Bostic is going to do at least the first hour, and then we'll see who. Maybe I'll ask Sonny to do the second hour.
All right. Well, a split screen thing with interviewing yourself could be.
Yeah, I know. If I could figure that out.
Could be tiring.
Yeah, I could probably do that on the phone or something, Yeah. That would be pretty humorous.
Yeah.
Frank, thanks for spending 2 hours.
Oh man, it's great to catch up with you a little bit here, and thank you so much for doing this and for all that you're doing to kind of keep us all with something to do, because now I'm going to go find my dog and ask him if he wants to go for a walk. Our roles have reversed. It's like, oh, can we go for a walk?
Okay.
Bless your heart. I love you.
I love you too. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right, I'm going to let you go, and then I'm going to talk, and I'm going to find out if I'm on the Italian show shortly after this.
Hey, good luck.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. So I am going to go look. I think that I had it on my home page too. So let's see. Because it would be nice for everybody to know. And also, since I'm supposed to have a lesson, I hope he doesn't charge me for shifting my lesson. See, I even take lessons too. Ooh, look at that. Ben Clapworthy. I'm going to have to, just released a record. Let's see. Eva, me. I am, oh gosh, maybe I should go to her page. So I just want to be sure. Now you're getting a look at my Facebook page. Frank, it should be down here somewhere. Eva, are you there? I can't believe, I could have sworn I wrote that down in my book. Okay, I'm going to have to look at Eva's page. Okay, so Eva Simontachi, there we go. And here I am, Thursday, July 9th. Okay, Roland, Thursday, July 9th. But I didn't write it down. And I am going to write that down in my book. So I'm glad you said something. So, yeah, Eva. Yeah. So Thursday, I'm going to be on Eva Simontachi's interview. And, yeah. So I have another fun thing that's happening too. One more thing I'll tell you guys about, which is that I have a single coming out. And I'm doing a slow build. So if you see some PR with me looking terribly, terribly seriously hip, or, those kind of photos, you'll know what that is. So I'm not going to tell you what the song is, but you will know. So let's see. And let me see I have a few more comments. There it is. Thank you. Yeah. Let's see. I have a few more comments, which was, I think Ralph was asking what time. Did I see that? Ralph, I thought I saw what time Saturday from somewhere. Maybe you sent me a message. Anyway, it's 12 to 2, always 12 to 2. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for hanging out. That was really fun, wasn't it? Hanging out with Frank Potenza and special guest Sonny Wilkinson and special guest Ron Newman coming in before his gazpacho. So tomorrow, Katia Moraes, and possibly Friday, Barbara Morrison. Otherwise, we'll put in another special guest, and Ralph Humphrey Saturday, Jennifer Lightham Sunday. As long as I have you on the line. Monday is Andrea Wolper and Ken Filiano, bass player and singer from New York. And then Tuesday is the 100th, which is when I'm going to get interviewed. And then, I don't know if you guys remember Les DeMerle. So Les DeMerle was a drummer. He is a drummer, but he was kind of in the style of Buddy Rich, and he made a big presence in the old days in LA. And he had a club, and so he's going to be on Wednesday the 15th. We're going to have Calabria Foti and perhaps her husband Bob McChesney, Jack Mouse, a great drummer from Chicago, and then Sunday the 19th, I'm going to have John DeVersa. So there's so many different varied people that I've invited to come on, all different instruments, and yeah, it's just my list is a long list. If you know me and you feel slighted, don't feel slighted. I just probably haven't gotten to you yet. Okay, bye. You guys take care. Have a great day. Mwah.